Hello drivers, we are thrilled to bring you a special video today. Reflection developers are answering driver fans' questions. To tackle this exciting Q&A project, I've partnered with fellow driver content creators to present Ubisoft insight into the driver series. Join us on a nostalgic journey full of fascinating details about the development of this beloved franchise. And we are sure you will learn a thing or two along the way. Enjoy!
The Alcatraz Island access. For a long time, we suspected that Alcatraz was more than just an island seen from afar. Mission scripts suggesting that we would be driving on it, as well as a map pinned to a studio wall that we noticed in a photo taken during development. With Stuart Scott's response, we are now sure that it has been considered. In fact, he told us, Alcatraz was initially accessible to the player, and had a simple looped road that they could drive around. The island was connected to the road network by two long underwater tunnels that created a loop of roads connecting downtown with Marin County in the north. Not exactly true to life, but a necessity for the way our road systems worked in the game. The island was a potential setting for the game's prison break narratives, both with Jericho's escape at the start of the game and the finale prison break scheme that Jericho planned to mask with his fake bomb scare. Why wasn't it in the game in the end? Apparently, the relocation of Jericho's prison and the redesign of the roads connecting the islands sealed the fate of the Alcatraz Island. That doesn't mean that people haven't tried to get to it, and it's even possible with one of the most famous out-of-bounds glitches that you can perform in the game. But you'll quickly discover the limitations of Alcatraz's remaining state.
Cut icon maps in DRIV3R. Let's make a detour into the category of art and the cut elements in DRIV3R's user interface. By examining the press demo files, or simply looking closely at some pre-release screenshots, a number of different icons were found. They depicted city landmarks and important story locations, and could have indicated to players that there were more places to explore in the cities than what initially appeared. Jack Couvela, art director at Reflections, is not surprised by this cut content. There are endless changes and decisions made during development, which means that features and ideas come and go all the time when making games. Sometimes cuts and changes are made for creative reasons, but often sacrifices are made to save space or the time needed to develop the feature to its full potential. To support this statement, it is true that the icon set changes drastically from city to city, with a completely different art style between Miami and Nice. This lack of harmonization could easily explain why it was dropped, as time was running out and other parts of DRIV3R still required the team's focus and effort.
On-foot gameplay. When the game was first unveiled, some in the community were surprised by the lack of on-foot gameplay, even though every game but the first had it. From the responses we received, it seems that on-foot gameplay was considered, but dropped fairly early in the development process. Apparently the shift mechanism has taken over from the on-foot controls, providing a way to change cars and avoid going back to the limitations of the very first driver, which locks you in your car. To quote Stuart Scott, mission designer on Driver San Francisco, one of the intentions with this driver game was to evoke the joy of playing with toy cars as a child. You are free to pick up and play with different cars one by one, switching to a fast sports car and skidding around corners before driving a heavy bus through the park, then sending a family sedan through the air before switching to a truck to complete a delivery. It was this sensation of creative freedom and quick selection of toy cars that informed the development of the shift feature. With shift, on-foot action just felt slow and restrictive in comparison, and it opened the doors to so many more interesting scenarios for gameplay that evoked that childhood glee of hovering over the next toy car to play with.
Stuntman development process. Although we've been concentrating mainly on the games in the Driver series, we didn't forget to ask the question about another great driving game developed by Reflections, Stuntman. As this game relies heavily on timing sequences, the scripts must also reflect this challenge, at least when the emulation doesn't break the recordings. When asked about this, Martin Oliver, mission scripter at Reflections from Driver2 to the present day, said it was incredibly difficult. We had very powerful tools that meant we could be wildly creative, but also meant we tried to push the boundaries of what was possible. All the elements were balanced using playtesting, not maths. We played each element over and over and made changes until it felt good and was achievable by as many players as possible. because the tools were satisfying to work with and the game was so much fun to make it never feel tedious. We just had the pressure to make a great game. In the end, the developers had to fail and retry the game missions as many times as we did. Even though I'm a big cheater, we will use the save states.
Zelda Easter egg in DRIV3R. This question of special significance for me as it settles a long-standing debate within the community. In DRIV3R in Istanbul, there is a shop with a sign reading Elda Electric. In Turkish, Elda translates to manual, which fits the context. However, the thing features a Z-shaped voltage symbol, leading me to interpret it as Zelda. This interpretation sparked much discussion, with the community divided over whether it was intentional or not. To resolve this, I asked the question to Reflections, and I'm thrilled to report that Jack Couvela confirmed my theory. It is indeed a Zelda Easter egg. Many veterans at Reflections are big fans of the Zelda series. Easter egg confirmed.
The art of building game cities. The Driver series has consistently impressed players with its realistic depictions of cities, even starting from the PlayStation 1 era. We were curious to know more about the process of creating these immersive environments and how the team gathered the resources to build the urban landscapes we've enjoyed driving through so much. Jack Couvela provided us with an insider's perspective on the process. The journey began with thorough research, a challenging task back in the days before Google Maps and the abundance of online images. The team relied on paper maps and books to highlight the most captivating parts of cities, including notable landmarks. Their objective was to draft a detailed layout that divided cities into engaging districts for players. This blueprint had to balance artistic vision and gameplay within the constraints of a large grid-based memory streaming system necessary for open-world gaming, leading to layouts that were a delicate compromise between technical, artistic, and gameplay considerations. Following the planning phase, the team embarked on location trips to gather the essential materials, a significant budget item at the time. These trips often sparked changes to initial plans, either due to unexpected inspiration from the real environment or because actual landmarks didn't quite match the paper descriptions. An original resource was the local people, including taxi drivers who provided insights into the noteworthy landmarks and neighborhoods. Remarkably, all photographs were taken on exposure films, as the early Driver games predated the era of digital photographs. This meant that the films had to be painstakingly labeled and transported back to the UK for processing, printing, and scanning into Photoshop before they could be integrated into the game engine. Despite being a cumbersome process, it was undeniably worthwhile, leading to some of the most memorable cityscapes in gaming history.
Cut Story Plots. We had a number of questions about the story elements of Driver San Francisco. To summarise, one of our inquiries concerned the character of Kirk, who we meet during the Escapist mission, but who is never heard of from again afterwards. Although his name is added to the evidence board, other story elements that caught our attention were based on cut picture-in-picture left in the game files, suggesting further side missions and the return of characters such as the salesman from Chapter 1. Ian Mayer, the game's scriptwriter, was kind enough to answer most of these questions in a combined response. Driver San Francisco was developed for a long time, with lots of story and mission ideas written, tried out, changed, cut, and so on. We did plan to do something with Kirk, having him linked to the wider plot, but I can't recall exactly how. It was a while ago. The pips that the community have unearthed were all part of missions that were cut for some reason. Either they weren't good enough or were cut for natural production reasons. Unfortunately, I can't remember the specifics. As for other story elements that we worked on, there were tons of ideas and plots we played with, and wrote/worked on to some extent. There were more world life scripts written, but never recorded. We kept the best ones. And we wanted to do a couple more things with Ordell, and toyed with the idea of rescuing him from his life of crime. The racing brothers, Ayumu and Jun, had scripts and stories for other drivers in the different cars, which was cut for cost and because there wasn't any different racing content by being other than in the cars. And in the main plot, we had a second key henchman character, along with Layla, who Tanner had took down early in the game. All these kind of edits are common in game development, and with all these cases, Driver San Francisco is a better game because we made the cuts we did.
DRIV3R Cut Characters feature. The great thing about the time between posting the questions and getting the answers is that we didn't just sit back and wait. We found some of the answers ourselves. While we asked about DRIV3R's Cut Characters feature because we'd found references to it in the text files, or even theorized about it based on the background of the Take a Ride menu, with Jones alongside Tanner, we found much more concrete material in the Xbox Press Kit demo, including mission files that let you choose your characters in many missions. You could have played Lomas, Bad Hand, Vauban, and Jones in more missions, so when we got back the answer that this may never have made it past the design document, but it would have been a cool feature, we took it with a grain of salt.
Driver parallel lines, name inspiration. Call it a wild guess, but some fans have a theory about driver parallel lines. They've noticed that the first song that plays on the radio when you start a new game is One Way or Another by Blondie from the 1978 album called Parallel Lines. This has led some to speculate that the game's title was inspired by the album. Martin Oliver, however, clarified that this was merely a coincidence. According to Oliver, the primary goal for Reflections was to select an iconic song to kick the game off to and energize players. Mission complete?
DRIV3R Tanner stripping. Of course, we had to ask why Tanner lost his suit in DRIV3R, especially considering there was a lot of gameplay footage of him wearing it during the promotional campaign. To this, Jack Couvela said, "I think it was felt that Tanner would have been a little overdressed in Miami wearing that big black suit." This comment made me realize that Driver is without a doubt the hottest episode in the series in terms of its cities. Although I have to agree with Jack on this one, we always regret the absence of the good old suit.
Tanner's ex-wife. During our analysis of the pre-release builds of Driver San Francisco, we discovered picture-in-picture videos showing in-game passenger cutscenes that included a conversation between Tanner and his ex-wife, Sarah, in one of the later chapters.
Playing the hero again, Tanner.
What, Sarah? Do I have a choice?
You saved me in a dream, but you couldn't save our marriage.
I'm sorry, baby. I didn't know what I'd lost until it was gone.
Ian Mayer, the writer of Driver San Francisco, shed light on this subplot and the reasons for its removal. Initially, the story included Tanner and Sarah's separation as a subplot, with Sarah eventually becoming a target for Jericho's gang. However, this storyline was ultimately cut for several reasons. The writers felt they couldn't fully develop this subplot within the constraints of the game. It would have required several missions to explore it properly. Additionally, it diverted focus from the central conflict between Tanner and Jericho and the mystery around the shift mechanic. There's also a lack of mission content that could naturally emerge from this kind of personal narrative. Indeed, the inclusion of a significant character like a partner for Tanner, who has traditionally been portrayed as a solitary figure, apart from a brief moment in one of Driver 1's ending, would have needed a lot more narrative space to effectively be handled within the game.
A new Driver game? Of course, we could not resist asking about the future of the Driver series. We carefully inquired whether the open ending of Driver San Francisco, with Rufus not being arrested and many prisoners still on the loose, meant that Reflections considered the story of Tanner and Jones to be concluded. To our surprise, this question made it through the selection process, and Ian Mayer responded, "Whether we return to Driver, Tanner and Jones is up to the fates. There is definitely more stories we could tell in this world. Do what you want with this information, drivers." And that wraps up today's video. A huge thank you to Manendrive, Olanov and Snoopy for lending their voices to the scripts, and to the Reflection developers for taking the time to answer our questions. This initiative began in 2020 and has passed through the hands of several community managers before becoming a reality. I'm especially grateful to Ollie Edwards and James Gorey for their dedication to making this happen, and to Stefan McGarry for giving it the initial push. Thank you all for your support. You can find the original script of the Q&A by following the link in the description. Thanks to my Red River producer, driveanimation.com, French Contact, Neurosins, Taikon on YouTube, Paul Lanois, David Autosport, Mute, Denis Frontier, and Ponyac for their support. You can also join the Redriver Club by following the link in the description. Support start at $1 or original equivalent, and you can again access to exclusive emojis, posts, videos, and of course supporting the channel. See you soon, drivers!